What's going on, Nathan?
How's it going?
It's going, man. How are you?
It's another day.
Another day. I hear you.
Getting through it.
Yeah, man. Thank y'all for joining us. If you're here, drop a comment. Let us know you're here. Otherwise, we won't know. This is Ending the Stigma, where we talk about kind of the struggles. Yeah, Twitch is working today, Holly. Kind of talk about the struggles that people that have been in prison and face when they get out. Talk about the stigmas associated with them, and just try to have a conversation to kind of open people's eyes and just see that, we know that everybody that gets out is not going to want to act right, but the ones that do are going to try their damnedest, to live a normal, productive life in society. So thank y'all for joining us. Thank y'all for all the support that y'all continually give Nathan and I both on our posts and on the show and all that kind of stuff. So we appreciate you very much. We couldn't do it without you guys. So, yeah. Nathan, anything you want to say to kick us off before we introduce our guest?
I'm trying to get this to work on LinkedIn. So
Yeah, what Holly's talking about, y'all. The other day I did a live and I had some technical difficulties with the guest and had to jump over to StreamYard. And because I had a free version of StreamYard, it would not let me stream to multiple platforms. So I got screwed all the way around. Restream is working tonight, though. So thank God for that. Our guest tonight, I've been hyping him up and I've shouted him out several times when he showed up in the comments on one of the shows. His name is Darren Wallace, and he spent almost 30 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice as a staff member, not as an offender. Started as a CO and worked his way up to warden. He retired as a warden. And when he got out, or when he got, when he got out, I guess he did get out. When he retired, he went to work for Cornbread Hustle. And if I've talked about Cornbread Hustle a bunch, y'all, just because it was really crazy the way it happened. My first couple of days on LinkedIn, Sherry Garcia popped up in my feed, and it was the first time I'd ever seen her or heard of any organization doing what they do. And it just blew me away. So I've been following them for a little over a year now and have connected with some of the other staff members there, and it's just a great organization. I'll let Darren tell a little bit more about it. I'm going to go ahead and bring him out. Hey, Darren.
Hey, how are you?
Good, man. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah, I know, right? Krista Cornbread Hustle. That actually came, refresh my memory. I think I saw Sherry do a video on it. That came from the movie Life, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about that real quick? What that
Sherry
name came about?
Yeah, Sherry's pretty open about her past.
Yeah, very.
So she wasn't yet fully in recovery, and she was
Right.
watching the movie Life at the same time she was trying to name her company, and the cornbread scene came on. And if you've been in prison, cornbread is pretty common.
3 meals a day
Yeah,
sometimes.
it comes with a lot of meals. So it kind of stuck with her, and she named it Cornbread Hustle.
I love it. That's awesome. Why don't you just kind of start off telling us a little bit about what we talked about backstage, just kind of how your career got started, and just kind of what made you want to go to work for Cornbread Hustle when you got out. That's the thing that fascinated me, and we've talked a little bit about or I've mentioned it before, is just the fact that somebody that worked in the prison system gets out and is now helping people that essentially it was his job to make sure they were secure while they were in there. So just tell us, just kind of start telling your story a little bit and how all that went.
Sure. Well, I started working for TDCJ in 1991 as a correctional officer. Started off at the Ellis unit.
Mm-hmm.
Then over the next 28 years and some change, I promoted through the ranks. I was a sergeant and lieutenant at the McConnell unit in the mid 90s, captain at the Stevenson unit. Then I went back to the McConnell unit as a captain, made major in 2004 at one of the training academies.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for a couple of years. Then went to the Conley unit as a major. Then I went to the Styles unit as an assistant warden, and that was
Okay.
in 2010. 2013, I made senior warden. As a senior warden, I went, gosh, oh, hey, Natalie, thanks. As a senior warden, I started off at the Glossbrenner unit and went from there to the LeBlanc unit in Beaumont, then to the Torres Knot complex, then to the Hughes unit, and finally to the Styles unit again, where I retired. So I kind of did the tour of Texas.
Kind of did the tour, and that's kind of what I've seen just from spending 8.5 years inside. That's kind of normal, especially once you kind of get up into the captain
Right.
and above. It's kind of normal to hop around and just not stick with a unit for very long.
Right. Well, there's a progression in the wardens. So you start off at a smaller 500 bed type facility and work
Okay.
your way up to the Big Macs.
Okay.
So that TDCJ does a great job of preparing its wardens so they're not overwhelmed. Because if you're not ready for it, you can be extremely overwhelmed on one of those big units as the person in charge.
Yeah, I can imagine. I didn't think about that, and I didn't know that, but it makes sense that they wouldn't make you a warden or an assistant warden and throw you somewhere like Beto or Cofield, where there's
Right.
3,500, and I think Cofield's like 48 or 49 or something like that.
Yeah, it's right around that 4,500 to 5,000.
40, yeah.
Big place.
And just think about that for a minute, y'all. Like whenever it's hard to wrap your head around it if you've never been to a big unit. Imagine 3,500 men in a space as big as just a couple of city blocks.
Right.
Or 5,000 men, almost 5,000 men in a space is just a couple of city blocks. Like that's a lot of people in one spot that you're responsible for.
It is. And then you throw in, those max security units are going to have depending on which unit it is, between 600 employees and about 1,000 employees that you're also responsible for. And that includes, that's not just correctional staff. That's all of the department support staff, everybody that's necessary to make a prison run.
Yeah, the free world staff. We call them free world bosses whenever we're on the inside. People like maintenance and
right,
classification and mail and supply and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. So it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a 24/7 job.
It is.
And
when shit hits the fan, it's your fault. And whenever it's going good, you don't get the attaboys.
No, not at all, because the attention goes to where things are not going right.
Right.
So if really not hearing from the people above you that much is a good thing.
Is a good thing. Yeah.
It's when the phone rings and it's one of them, you go, oh no, did something go wrong? I don't know about yet.
Right. When the regional director's on your phone, you know something's bad.
Yeah. You hate for people to find things out before you do on your own facility. And that happens sometimes, but for the most part, going back to the folks that make Warden, there's a lot of preparation that goes into that. TDCJ, I don't have a lot of experience with other systems, but TDCJ does a really good job of preparing people for those roles. And if they're not ready, they don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't go in for a job interview for Warden. You put in an application, and when they think you're ready, you get promoted.
Yeah.
So,
and it kind of seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, they do that. Hey, Angelique, good to see you. I had a good conversation with her earlier. Correct me if I'm wrong, just from, and they don't tell us being offenders in there how it goes, but just kind of watching. Like we had a major that came through, and he was on the track to become a warden. PAC was a small unit. It's like 1,500 men. He left there and went to McConnell.
Right.
A bigger unit. That was probably done in preparation for him to kind of get his feet wet a little bit more.
I would imagine.
That's just speculation.
But yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, and that's pretty much it. And that's, you go back to that, you can choose to stay where you are for the most part and not promote. The people who have promotion in mind are the ones who don't try to stay on those small units. Because, let's face it, it is not as difficult to manage one of those smaller units with offenders who, for the most part, have nonviolent sentences, shorter sentences. They see the finish line and go to a max where some people, there is no finish line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got the life without parole, or people who their parole officer hasn't been born yet. And,
Right.
you know, they're a little different kind of management challenge.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of respect for the people who choose to bump up and go to those bigger units, because that major's not getting paid more at McConnell
Mm-mm.
than he is at PAC. Same money.
Mm-mm. Mm-hmm.
The wardens, I think they've done something with the pay for the correctional staff now, where there's a little differential. But the only folks traditionally who had seen it were the wardens, based on the size of the facility.
Okay.
So the folks who choose to assume that responsibility, those are the ones to keep an eye on. You
Yeah.
know, it's funny though. Sometimes you had the right view on it. He left, and that's what it was for. But there's probably those out there that are also like, "No, man, you know, we got in trouble," and that rumor mill hits too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, what is it, Roy? Rumor on the yard.
Yeah. Rumor on the yard. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Parole officer hasn't been born yet. That's a pretty common saying you hear in there. I mean, man, my parole officer hadn't even been born yet. You're like, oh snap.
Right.
So all of this, you've had a lot of operations experience,
Right.
a lot of managerial experience and supervisorial, whatever experience. Um, so that has probably served you very well in being the director of operations at Cornbread Hustle.
It has. You know, actually, that was how I really got connected with Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you saw my video that Cornbread Hustle did of me on LinkedIn and Facebook, I think it was there, and it's probably on our YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what happened was when I retired, it was just before COVID hit in 2020. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I retired February 29th of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So after I retired,
You got out just in time.
I did. You know, it's like God whispered in my ear.
Yeah, right.
It's like, your blood pressure can't take it, brother. You got to go.
Yeah.
But, you know, COVID hit and I was stuck in the house. It was me
Yeah.
and the dogs. My wife was still working, and pretty much the dogs were sick of me.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sick of them yet, but my boredom was hitting.
Right.
So I actually started substitute teaching. I was
Okay.
substitute teaching out of middle school to help out, because, you know, some of those schools down there they stayed out for the end of that school year, but they cranked right back up.
Right.
So I was substitute teaching, and I had become friends with Damon West.
Mm-hmm.
Damon had been one of my offenders when I was an assistant warden at Stiles. You know, and if you see the video, he tells the story.
Mm-hmm.
And he also has the story of our interaction in prison in his book, The Change Agent.
Mm-hmm.
But when I retired, he lived just a few miles from me, man, like 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
So we did lunch a couple times and just stayed in contact. And he knew Sherry, met Sherry. And she was looking for somebody who could help her with operations.
Yeah.
And because if you've met Sherry, Sherry is brilliant.
Yeah.
And she's an entrepreneur. She's a visionary. Super brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted somebody that would help her with day-to-day.
Mm-hmm.
And Damon introduced us, you know, so went up to Dallas. I was still in Beaumont, went to Dallas and took my wife with me, and we met Sherry, and I spent a couple of days with Cornbread Hustle, and it was a fit. So I joined up. We moved up to the Dallas area.
That is awesome, man. Like I've said it 100 times. It really kind of restored, and I talked about it in my post today, and I've talked about it a few times. It's an us versus them.
Right.
You know, and that was after 8 years plus in there. That was kind of ingrained in me. So just to see the human side of people that have been in the correctional side of it is just amazing to me.
Well, you know, I kind of compare wardens and teachers
Mm-hmm.
in what you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
because the first time you see your third grade teacher on the beer aisle in some ratty cargo shorts and t-shirt after they mowed the yard, your world changes.
Right.
All of a sudden, you realize they don't exist just in the classroom realm.
Right.
And it's kind of the
Exactly.
same thing with wardens.
I see
You
that,
run into
yeah.
people in town, and it doesn't matter whether it's one of your staff members or whether it's an offender who's gotten out. You know, a lot of times
Mhm.
they stop in their tracks.
Yeah.
And because the realization that now the warden's a person too,
Yeah.
you know, uh, I grocery shop. I do honeydews. I did
Right.
those things. Of course, now I don't go by warden. I don't use that title.
Right.
I retired and I left that to the people who are still in there
Hmm.
doing the job. But
Yeah.
um, it's that us versus them really is almost necessary at the correctional officer level.
Yes.
Because of corruption and manipulation. And
Hmm.
let's face it, most of the folks who are going in there as correctional officers don't have the same level of street experience that
Hmm.
most of those locked up in there do.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a lot who are easily manipulated. I mean,
Hmm.
there's no getting around that. That's the biggest way that contraband comes into a facility.
Hmm.
So that us versus them at that level is kind of necessary. But as you progress up, your role kind of changes. You know, uh, there's not a whole lot of the offenders who are in the game in prison who are going to hit the warden up bringing a cell phone.
Right.
You know, by the time you get to that level, that's kind of over. 'Cause-
Right.
and you're really in a position where you can do something for them if it's necessary.
Hmm.
So their interactions are a little different.
Yeah.
So as you go up, you as a staff member moving through the ranks, you really kind of get a different view of the inmate population. I mean, you still got the people in prison who are still going to be criminals. They're
Hmm.
just going to be. But then you also have the folks who this is what they needed.
Hmm.
They're in there taking advantage of the programs, the education, whatever that's available, staying out of the day room drama.
Hmm.
They're not watching the soap operas, they're reading a book.
Hmm.
Um, so your interaction with those people can be a little more genuine and a little more on a human level.
Yeah.
And so by having healthy relationships like that, I used to feed chow almost every day. I'd either be out there at lunch or the dinner meal, sometimes come in for breakfast, and I would stand in front of the chow hall
Yeah.
because it cut down on I-60s and grievances.
Yeah.
Um, Made myself available to them. Um, so you get that level of, I'll call it trust. You get a level of
Yeah.
trust, or they get a level of trust with you, and it really helps. But you also, once you spend 3 decades working in that place, you start seeing the same faces over and over.
Hmm.
And sometimes you see the same face more than once, and then you see their kids.
Mm.
And that kind of drives home,
Hmm.
the whole generational incarceration.
Hmm.
That it that's kind of why I was drawn to Cornbread Hustle,
Hmm.
because at some point the people who want an opportunity need to have it. A
Yeah.
5-year drug sentence doesn't need to be a life sentence because you're
Right.
now considered a felon and can't get a job.
Right.
And so that's where Sherry, with her vision and Cornbread Hustle, really kind of broke out of what anybody was doing at that point. And going out, getting employers who were willing to take that chance. Cornbread Hustle is usually when we go to a company, we're the pilot for second
Yeah.
chance hiring. We have a
Yeah.
company right now that we just started with that we're the pilot. We're the first time, they're a nationwide company, first time that they've tried this. And so, with the reputation that Cornbread Hustle has and the credibility that the organization and Sherry have, these companies are willing to step out with us to try to do that.
And that's something really cool I want you to kind of hit on, if you don't mind, is y'all aren't just a staffing and recruiting agency. Sherry goes to these companies, these really big companies, and negotiates with them and lays out the plan and lays out the pros and the cons and is honest about
Right. We're not a fit
what the
for
risks are.
everybody.
Right,
We're
exactly.
not a fit. We're not a fit for everybody. And that's okay. Some
Yeah,
folks aren't ready.
yeah.
And if the leadership in a company is not ready, that's not going to bode well for the people coming in.
Hmm.
If they do it just because they want employees right now, that's somebody that we're probably going, maybe not. because you're going to struggle. So the companies we are a fit with, oh, appreciate that, Krista.
Yeah.
The companies we are a fit with, what they find is the retention rate with the folks we're bringing in many times is higher than what they've been experiencing. And of course, that a big part of that is folks get a job with the future.
Yeah.
And they know it's going to be hard to find another one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So they become a dedicated employee.
And a lot of the jobs I've seen different people on staff post are not, $8, $10 an hour jobs. They're 15, 20, 25 and
Right.
up an hour job. They're decent
Right.
paying jobs.
Exactly. And if you look at our website on the jobs, a lot of times you'll see direct hire jobs up there, what people call headhunting, where we're actually, we have our temp staffing side, which is what gets most of the attention, but we also have that direct hire side where
they basically don't go through y'all as a temp agency. They just go to work directly for the company.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We do the recruiting
Mm-hmm.
and then they interview, and if the company hires them, then they've got that job.
Yeah.
So there's two different sides to it. But the temp staffing is what provides the biggest opportunity to people. I mean, we hired over 1,000 people last year.
I know. I saw that. I'm glad you brought it up because I meant to. I saw the video Sherry did yesterday or the day before. And she got real emotional. Can you imagine 1,000 people, second chance people, being placed in a good job with a future at a good company last year?
Right.
That's amazing, man.
For somebody who is ready to embrace that second chance, who's leaving that lifestyle behind and is ready to go, that's ideal. If you watch that video, you see the stories of Carlos and JoJo. Those guys have good jobs now. And a huge part of that was their dedication to doing well. They made that decision. They're going to do well. So folks who haven't made that decision, they're just trying to get their PO off their back or whatever.
Right.
They're not going to make it because they haven't bought in yet.
Right.
So we need that buy-in. And of course, we aren't shy about the fact that all of our recruiters have experience with incarceration or drug use or both and recovery.
Yeah.
That's part of, I guess you call it the secret sauce.
They get it.
Yeah, they're able to vet. They're people who made that decision and are doing great. And I love every one of them. They're just awesome. And there's only a couple of us who have not had interaction with law enforcement other than speeding tickets. And that was one of the concerns, and Sherry actually put that on the video of that they produced of me on the post. She actually put, it was hard for her to pull the trigger on hiring me because she didn't know what the internal employees were going to think.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, you brought in a warden.
Right. That us versus them mentality,
right.
what I mean? Yeah.
Right. And they figured out pretty quick that wasn't what I was there for.
Yeah.
And even when I was a warden, I wasn't that warden,
Right.
At least I don't think I was.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are some people who differ with that opinion, but
I'm sure there are. You can't please them all.
No, you can't. And some of them you don't need to please. There's
Yeah.
some folks that have no business being in there.
Yeah.
So, it was an adjustment for all of us at first.
I'm sure.
Because I hadn't operated in this realm either. Staffing. Now, staffing took up a bunch of my time as a warden. Anybody that knows about the current shortage of correctional officers that's actually been going on for years, knows that every unit, especially the big ones, are challenged with staff.
Yeah.
Recruiting, retaining, the attrition rates can be just outrageous on some of those facilities. So as far as that went, I was okay. The business side of it, there was a learning curve.
Yeah, I bet.
But it worked out. I caught in. They were patient with me.
Yeah.
A lot of the
How long have you been there now?
It'll be a year in June.
Okay. Cool.
So, in fact, I met Sherry about a year ago, toward the end of April, when we actually got introduced.
That sounds like something that would happen in prison, Gabe.
Yeah, it went from bad to worse. They tore the
Yeah.
A's out
Yeah, exactly.
and the XYZs.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, I couldn't be happier that I joined up and I get to do this now.
Yeah.
You know, going to work isn't I have to do it,
Hmm.
because I was substitute teaching. That I was not looking for a job.
Hmm.
Um, because I could pick and choose the days I work, that kind of thing. Um,
Let me interrupt you for a second.
sure.
Scott Rogers. Man, I have not seen you in forever, dude. Good to see you,
Months,
brother.
months and months.
Months and months. He got a job and disappeared off the face of LinkedIn. Like he was one of our ride or die homies last year.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
And then he
Yeah,
got a
good to
job.
see you,
Forgot
man.
about all this.
Yeah, exactly.
Heard any good jokes in prison?
I have, but I better not repeat them here.
That's what I was going to say. I've heard a lot of good jokes in prison, but I can't tell them. Not here.
Yeah, better not.
Yeah, we
We
talked
try to
about
keep
cancel
it.
culture earlier.
Yeah.
Get canceled.
Sherry's liable to go back and watch this and be like, "What were you doing?"
Oh, yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
um, that's got to be, and I never even thought about it. Um, yeah, I love you too, brother. Uh, as you go up through the ranks of administration up to a warden, that your viewpoint changes of the offenders and the men and women that are incarcerated. And I guess it makes sense now that you mention it because you're looking at it from a different angle.
Right.
You're not looking at it. You're not dealing with the day to day. Hey, Desi.
Hey, there's Desi.
Yeah,
Tell you what, Desi's one of my favorite people.
is she?
Absolutely. I love her.
I I've been kind of toying around with the idea of just kind of going down the line of all the people at Cornbread Hustle that I'm connected to, and just kind of letting them tell their story because they're kind of the epitome of what this show is about.
Right.
Mhm.
Been in trouble, been in prison, jailed, strung out, whatever, coming out and are doing good.
Well,
Um,
Desi, I won't tell her whole story. You can see it on YouTube on our channel.
yeah,
Um, but she is absolutely the epitome of what Cornbread Hustle is, because she started with us as a temp
hmm,
and then got hired internally and is now my coworker. Um, her story is awesome. They all have great stories.
yeah.
Um, but Desi's story just absolutely will floor you. Watch that video.
Okay, I will. Desi, if you want to come on the show, the next opening's May the 4th, 2 weeks from the day. If you want to come on. Um, I was saying something. Oh, about looking at it from a different view, being a warden.
Right.
I get distracted by comments. Really
Oh, I do
easy.
too. I squirrel all the time.
And just seeing, like you said, the generational incarceration and learning to see kind of the root causes or seeing past just, you know, bunk number 1626. That was my bunk number.
Oh yeah, she'll be at Kingdom of Work.
All right. Maybe 2 weeks after that, I'll shoot you a DM. If you want to come on the show, we'll set up a date to get you on. It doesn't have to be May the 4th. Um, damn, I squirreled again.
We're talking about perspectives changing.
Perspectives, yes, perspective changing. Thank you. And I'm sure you weren't that kind of guy anyway, where you just had that mentality, looking at all the guys. Um, but did that have anything to do with you wanting to go to work for Cornbread Hustle and believing in what they're doing? I'm sure it had to have.
Yes, it had a huge part of it. never underestimate the impact that wardens have, and just correctional staff in general, good folks, the ones who are in there
Mm-hmm.
doing the right thing, the impact they can
Mm-hmm.
have in helping somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I've been amazed since I retired the number of ex-inmates who have reached out to me,
Really.
uh, say, "Hey, I'm doing good."
Mm-hmm.
And you don't you don't hear on a daily basis when you're working in prison, "Hey, you're
Mm-hmm.
doing a great job." It's usually if somebody comes up and tells you, "Hey, you're doing a great job," and it's not your boss, and they're usually up to something. There's usually something behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You get suspicious of that.
Mm-hmm.
So a random offender coming up and saying, "Hey, you're doing a great job." Okay, maybe if we finish the Thanksgiving meal in 3 hours, we did a great job.
Right.
Other than that, if I don't know you, I'm going to be suspect.
Yeah.
But part of the advantage as you move up is you lose some of that suspicion. But you know, I was I was amazed by hearing stories how I impacted people. It was a
Mm-hmm.
shock to me when Damon put me in his book. I was
Mm-hmm.
actually still working as a warden when that book came out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never knew really that I'd had that sort of impact on him.
Yeah.
Um, so this is a way to impact from a different direction.
Yeah.
So for me, that drew me to it. I was looking at nonprofits that were
Mm-hmm.
dealing with youth, at-risk youth, before I
Mm-hmm.
met Sherry and came this way, because I knew I wanted to be involved somehow.
Yeah.
I just had not really discovered how.
Mm-hmm.
And I still, I'm not discounting the being involved in nonprofits,
Right.
just as a volunteer or
Right.
whatever, also
Right.
just to impact that direction. But I think, I don't do a lot of preaching. I do have strong faith, but I don't throw it out there a lot because I don't want to, sometimes you either reach them or you turn them off. So
Mm-hmm.
staying in the middle sometimes works well.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think being introduced to Sherry through Damon
Mm-hmm.
was a God thing. I
Yeah.
really do. It was just too random.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry and I would have never interacted without Damon's intervention. You
Right.
know, my wife called him. Well, your agent got you a job. Uh, Only partially true. My agent got me an
Yeah.
introduction.
Right.
Sherry is the one who decided that I would be a
Right.
fit with her and the
Right.
team. But I was still a little worried, when I took the job. It was a big step. I've been moving around Texas for years, and here I was
Yeah.
about to drag my wife across Texas again.
Yeah.
In fact, I promised her we got here, we bought our house in Allen, and I told her, unless you want to move, this is where we're going to be.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that to you anymore. She has been extremely patient
Mm-hmm.
throughout my career and just
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. But when I was pulling out of Beaumont, and I can text you the picture, but a rainbow came up. It wasn't raining, nothing, but there was a rainbow. So I pulled my phone up, took a picture, and
Yeah.
sent it to Sherry and said, "Okay, I did the right thing.
Yeah.
Glad I'm coming."
Yeah.
So I'm not huge on signs, but I think I got a sign that day.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
And
That's really cool.
yeah, and so here we are in Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah. That's on the list of when I'm off parole and can move around a little more freely. I'm going to go see Gabe. He lives in Fort Worth, and there's a couple other people up there. When I kind of make that little Dallas tour, I want to swing by the office
Cool,
and meet y'all and see some of y'all.
cool. Yeah,
I
give me
think
a
it'd be
holler.
fun. Yeah, I will. Um, I had something I was going to ask you. What is your wife doing now? You said she retired. Is she working anywhere? Does she
No,
just kind of?
nope. She is retired. That's
That's
it.
that she is
That's
retired.
all she needs to be. If she
Yeah,
decides
I
to go do
understand.
something cool, um, I'm perfectly happy having her at the house.
Yeah.
Like I said, is the patience and wherewithal to move as many times as we moved.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, the kids were grown by the time that final push, where it was like 5 moves in 4 years. The kids were grown and out of the house at that point.
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, every time I moved, she had to move also, and she worked for TDCJ, and they were really good about helping her find another job, but sometimes it wasn't the same job.
Mm-hmm.
She was a chief of classification for years and years on 3 different units.
Mm-hmm.
And when she retired, she was working in reentry because all the moves, she took available positions.
Yeah.
And so the last several years, I guess the last 3 years, she worked reentry.
Okay.
So I'm perfectly
When
happy
I,
to have her just at the house or wherever she wants to be.
yeah, the assistant warden on PAC he worked for classification in Huntsville before he came over to PAC, I think, or maybe he went there after. I don't remember. Bill Noski.
Yeah, he was in classification, then went
Then went to PAC.
to be a
Yeah.
warden. Yeah,
He was
really
a
good
pretty
guy.
good. Yeah, he was. He was a pretty good assistant warden. The senior warden we had, I wasn't just too crazy about, but Mr. Bilnoski was pretty. He was
Right.
pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I like him.
Yeah, he was a good dude. I know Darren and I are doing all the talking. Nathan.
Yes.
So I'm just sitting here thinking, listening to you guys talk about the way it works in Texas. In Colorado, I spent time at probably 7 different facilities. I could
Really?
not name for you a single one of my wardens or assistant wardens. Not
Wow.
one.
Yeah,
Couldn't even get his name. I have no idea.
and the prisons where that happens to me become scary because the wardens should not be just a figurehead.
Mm-hmm.
That is an in the trenches position. It really
Mm-hmm.
is. Texas, if your leadership walked in and none of the inmates knew who you were, you as the warden, you've got a problem, like
Yeah.
serious problem.
Yeah, in Colorado, it's just normal. I don't know that I can name for you a single person above like captain that
Right.
I ever interacted with. So
Right. That is one of the exact reasons I stood in front of the chow hall every day.
Yeah.
Because they need to know who you were. I walked my seg areas. I walked my close custody areas regularly because they needed to know who you were. They needed to be comfortable asking you a question or bringing you a concern.
Mm-hmm.
right.
And a lot of times, if you stand there and listen to whatever the complaint is, your answer doesn't really matter. They're happy because you listened to them.
Yeah.
And that takes some of the stress off them because they got it off their chest. And it takes some of the stress off the staff who are interacting with them a whole lot more than I am. And it creates a more stable environment.
Yeah.
Because you spend a whole lot of time trying to make sure that the environment's safe and stable. That your goal is nobody gets hurt, period.
Yeah.
And everything else, if you get everything else accomplished, great. If not, if everybody's safe, the job's accomplished as far as I'm concerned.
Gabe come up with some craziness, boy.
Now, I will say Shawshank Redemption is probably the only prison movie I like.
Yeah.
You're not going to catch me watching Lock Up or
No.
back in the day when Oz was out.
So
My brother-in-law Tony
was-
used to.
I think it was the show Locked Up on Nat Geo.
Yeah.
When I was at Fremont Correctional Facility here in Colorado, they actually came in and did an episode. And I tell you what, after I saw the episode air of the facility that I was at while I was there, I was like, where are they filming this? Like,
Yeah.
not at all even what this.
I caught one when that show first came out, and it showed a warden standing in a cell block. It was a whole bunch of B's and H's and MFers. And I was like, no, you didn't do that and I'll get fired. That's a setup.
Yeah.
That's just not acceptable behavior.
Yeah.
So to me, that went the way of most reality shows where, yeah, okay.
I've tried to watch a few of them too, and I'm just like, I can't do it, man. It's so unrealistic.
It's not real. It's not real. None of it is.
or
Yeah,
just blue black.
I don't have any experience in a women's prison, but I would venture to say it's not quite like that.
Oh, I don't have any experience in a women's prison either. My wife did work at 2 different ones in Gatesville when I was the warden at Hughes, and I think she has more stories from there than she does from all the men's facilities that she
Man,
worked at.
I've heard horror stories, man. There was a sergeant at Choice Moore when I was on Choice Moore in Bonham. Yeah, I can tell Gabe's a fellow live streamer. He's the one that kind of took me under his wing and kind of helped me get into the producing part of it. Um, he got a new position at his job where he's working different hours now, and he hasn't been able to stream or watch streams in a minute.
Oh
So
wow!
he's all in the comments having a party. Um, one of our sergeants had been in Gatesville at a women's unit. I don't remember which one. And he said, dude, I'll never go back to a women's unit.
Right.
Never. He said, he used the example. He said, you've all, have the buddy or you've been married to, one of your ex-old ladies is nuts. He said, imagine 1,000 of them in one spot. He said, that's exactly what it's like.
I tell you, I've been in a couple just because working in that region, that's going to happen. And I took call for the regional director while they were in between regional directors because I wasn't eligible to apply because my wife worked in the region and had to go to Mountain View for something. And so, I did a tour of the Mountain View unit. And by the time I left, I was like, whew, okay, whole new respect for female officers, male units, whole new respect. Because I look in the mirror every day. I know what the hell I look like. And yeah, that was uncomfortable.
Yeah, I bet it was.
Yeah.
I never even thought about that. Like the same treatment that the women get in the male facilities is probably the same treatment the men get in a female facility.
Pretty much. And it was not for me. I could tell you that.
Right.
It wasn't for me. But there's some people who do whole careers there and have no issues whatsoever and love it. And I'm glad we have those people, so I didn't have to do that.
Right.
But it's also being scared of dogs because you never had one.
Yeah.
I guess you could say if I had to do that every day, I'm sure prison's prison pretty much.
Yeah.
But a lot of respect for the people who do that. Yeah, I see Desi truth.
Yeah, truth. Yeah, exactly.
No doubt about it.
Desi, didn't you go back in? Didn't I see a video where you went back in with Sherry and spoke at like a graduation of some sort or something?
Strive graduation.
Strive, yeah.
You did see a video like that, and she can answer in the comments, but yeah, she and Sherry went into a Strive graduation and they were both speakers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was powerful. When you listen to Desi speak, Desi's powerful.
Yeah.
She and Sherry both are just gifted speakers, but Desi's story is just so crazy. I mean, just where she started. I don't know how to talk on here. I'm talking for you, Desi. Don't worry about it.
It's no place I want to go back to.
There you go. But she didn't have a rough upbringing. She's a perfect example of somebody who came from a great background and made choices, and then went down the rabbit hole to Neverland for a while.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, so
for sure.
But she did go back in, and if you watch that video, I'd encourage people to go watch that video. And TDCJ actually assisted with some footage from that.
Okay.
So, in fact, I think TDCJ actually put out a video with Desi in it also.
Really? Desi, was that not trying to turn this into the Desi show, but now
no, please do. Desi's great.
Yeah, I do want to get her on the show for sure. Was that the unit y'all went and did that Strive graduation? Was that the unit you were incarcerated on? Did you do time on that unit? That would be really cool if it was. It's cool either way, but it would be really cool if it was.
Yeah, it was.
Post the link. Let me find it on YouTube. Angelique real quick, and I'll post the link.
Yeah, Desi was actually that Strive program. She was in the first cohort of it, so she was
Okay.
one of the first graduates, and
Okay.
went back in to speak.
Is this it?
Yep. There
Yeah,
she
I
is.
went
Yes.
back one time a few years ago. They called it an in-reach program. So they got a bunch of guys who were imminently paroling and then brought in a few guys who were on parole just to talk about some of the struggles and challenges. And so I was invited to do that once. I was also invited to go to Colorado DOC headquarters to talk to a new hire class about
Oh, cool.
being on parole. So
Man, that's great. You know,
So let me say this real quick. Those two links I just dropped, Angelique. One is Desi's story, and one is the video of her and Sherry at that graduation. So that's what those two links are. All right, go ahead, Darren. I'm sorry.
oh, no, I for the credibility, that's one of the reasons why I'm such a fan of the field minister program that Texas has. The credibility from someone who's been in the same seat
Mm-hmm.
and tells the story is just has so much more impact than if I walked in and talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because some are going to be turned off immediately just because that title Warden jumps in there and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. But someone who's been there, done that, and done well has so much more impact. So I'm glad they're doing that.
Yeah.
Really am.
yeah,
Hey,
they haven't done it in several years, obviously, but
Yeah.
when I went in, so I went into Cheyenne Mountain in 2017, I think. And then I went and talked to that new hire class in 2018. So,
Yeah. Man, I hope they start it back up because that's just, that's impactful.
It really is, man. I remember being inside and then hearing, volunteers that would come in that had been in prison before always had a greater impact than the ones
Right.
that hadn't. And even like with Brandon, going back in and teaching, having been incarcerated before,
Right.
would have more impact on those guys because he can relate to exactly where they're at versus like I had a history teacher whenever they had college on the PAC unit before they took it off. They've since put it back, but when I was there, they took it off the unit. He was 26 years old, 27 years old, never been in any trouble before. Cool guy, but he was just like blown away.
Clueless.
Clueless. So it's a whole lot more impactful whenever somebody that's been in goes back in and speaks or does anything.
It's one I'm really glad that TDCJ not just allows that, but it encourages it.
Encourages it. Yep.
So that's if you really want to make an impact, you have to do things that traditionally have not been done, and be willing to step out there a little bit. The solutions.
In Colorado, it was a whole process to get approval for you to go in. It was not a quick and easy thing.
Yeah, it was not. I won't call it quick and easy for Texas, but it's not impossible at all.
No, it's not. It took me several months.
Yeah.
Because I'm still on parole. It took me several months from the time I went through the training and then they submitted my paperwork. She was my wife at the time. She's my ex-wife now. She got approved like that.
Right.
But it took me probably 3 or 4 more months past her before they finally said, yeah, you're good to go.
Yeah, if it wasn't for me going in with parole to do this specific thing, I don't think I would have gotten approval to go in for anything.
Yeah.
Right. Prison administrators are going to have to get out of their comfort zone some. Texas, and I'm not talking about Texas at all in that because they absolutely have. They are leading the charge on recidivism, but other folks need to follow that example. It's if you really want to impact recidivism, it takes some creative solutions. I mean, not TDCJ, Cornbread Hustle is a corporate solution, to give people that opportunity to address one of the barriers to reentry. Of course, you've got housing, transportation, and employment.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we're able to help tackle employment.
Mhm.
Hopefully down the road, we'll be able to address some of the other also as we grow. But at this point, we are able to get people jobs straight out of prison.
Yeah.
We're speaking at parole offices. Um, we'll be going into some of the private facilities. I've had some talks with one of those companies. I won't throw them out there. Chili Mac.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question in a minute, Gabe. I see it. I'm going to let Darren finish, and then we're going to
I
answer
have my
that.
answer.
Worst. Oh, I bet I have you all beat on that one.
Okay.
I lost my. No, I
Watch,
squirreled.
watch him say management loaf.
That's one of them.
Yeah, I
The
never
food
did. I
loaf.
never was lucky enough to partake of that.
The
Oh,
breakfast
I
loaf
never
isn't
had to
bad.
either.
The breakfast loaf is pretty good.
I've heard that same thing.
Yeah, it tastes like pancakes for the most part.
Yeah.
It's
So
not bad.
loaf, y'all. For y'all that don't know what loaf is, they take all the food that they're serving, and this is for mainly like SEG and people that are acting stupid. They take all the food, blend it all up, mix it all up, put it in cornbread, and bake it, and that's what you get is a loaf. And then for breakfast, they pour pancake batter over it and do the same exact thing.
Right.
Never got to eat that, thank God.
Well, I did. When I was a lieutenant in administrative segregation at McConnell when Food Loaf started. Actually, when the whole what I call the new SEG plan started, because when I first was working Ad Seg, you had two classifications. You had Ad Seg A, Ad Seg B, and they were treated differently, but they were still SEG. But then when they came out with the leveling system, that all changed, and then they had some of those extra management tools, and one of them was that Food Loaf.
Yeah.
That's still not the worst thing I ate in prison, though.
What was your worst thing you ate in prison?
When I worked on death row at Ellis, we made the trays there on the cell block. We made the tray, we handed them out, we slopped the trays, sent them back to the kitchen. And about once a week, they would have this concoction that was basically all the pork product from the week that they had blended together and thrown some mayonnaise in. I'm trying to think. They called it meat spread.
I'm gagging.
It was like potted meat. The white label that says generic potted meat. That's kind of what it was like. That stuff was nasty. They did not have to worry about anybody trying to get extra those days.
Yeah, I bet.
They'd serve that with crackers and some vegetables. And oh man.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
so
that was bad.
Chili Mac's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Tuna noodle casserole, I couldn't stand it. If I could, it smelled like fish down the whole hallway and back, and it's a long hallway. I also did not like the pork patty. The pork patty to me was just the nastiest thing I've ever eaten in my life.
Oh man, if you get that with some mustard and some bread that isn't stale, it's not too bad.
No, I liked the pork roll, the one that was like ham, but that pork patty at Pack they served them, and it was terrible. It was nasty.
For us, it was whenever they had some kind of soup on the menu, because they would literally just find whatever was in the walk-in. So whatever vegetables, whatever ground meat, just throw that into a big old pot with tomato paste and water, and that was
that was pretty rough.
I can see that.
We had something every once in a while, probably three. Yeah, pork roll was awesome, Dizzy. You were absolutely right. I could mess off some. I had a buddy. So when I worked for the chaplain, I was a chaplain's clerk, and had a buddy, the same guy I was telling you about backstage that opened Torres.
Right.
Super good guy, man. He turned his life around. He was an ex-KEG member. He got saved, turned his life around, and he's out now and doing phenomenal. But he worked in the kitchen commissary. And those guys that work there get to eat good. They work directly for the captain, and they get to eat.
Right.
And so when he got off, he'd come down to the chaplain's office, and he always brought me an egg, pork roll, pickles, jalapenos on buttered toast sandwich, man. And that was unfreaking believable. That pork roll and egg sandwich was awesome. For sure.
I can see that.
Yeah, it was good.
Desi's talked about the pork roll before. It apparently had an impact on her.
Yeah, it was good, man. Sometimes this is the kind of stuff you talk about in prison, right? So sometimes they'd bake it and it wouldn't really be all that great, but if they grilled it where it had kind of a little crust on it, man.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like fried bologna.
Yeah, man. It was worth 2 stamps to get an extra one of those.
I bet.
For sure. They also used to have, they did a breakfast pizza sometimes where they did like pizza crust and then white gravy, eggs, sausage, and jalapenos or onions or something like that. That was pretty good. They didn't do that very often though.
Oh man, I never had the breakfast pizza, but I could see that.
It was
Although
good.
penitentiary pizza wasn't that bad.
It
You
wasn't,
know,
man. It was
It was
actually
all right.
really good.
yeah, it was almost like school lunch pizza. You know,
Yeah.
it was all right. Um, no, my favorite was probably chicken fried steak.
I saw a chicken fried steak maybe twice the whole time I
Well,
was down
I
there.
know it was rare. You know, it
Yeah.
was rare, but it wasn't bad. Although I have a chicken fried steak story that I can't share on here, but I did avoid it for a while. Um, I considered it cursed,
Yeah.
but I got over that eventually.
Yeah.
You know, and penitentiary fried chicken's pretty good too.
It is. It was really good. We didn't see it very often either, but
No,
it was good whenever they had it. I
oh,
tell you what, I got one time though. I got a pork chop one time that still had hair on it from the skin. I picked it up and I was like, "What the?" I showed it. I was like, "Look at this, y'all. There's freaking hair on my pork chop."
that's funny. You know, where now we
Where'd
did
you
have
go?
years ago. I was probably a sergeant. We had fresh greens that they'd
Hmm.
grown in the unit garden, and
Hmm.
I found a grasshopper in mine. Uh,
Really?
it had been cooked. It was green. It was yeah, I almost missed it. So that turned me off of fresh vegetables there for a little bit. But you know, all in all, they really do a good job considering how many meals a day they're preparing.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
we
that's
used
a
to gripe about, you get greens and they'd still be gritty and all that kind of stuff, but you got to think they're cooking from anywhere from 500 to 4,500 people.
yes,
Uh, a
Mhm.
three
little bit
times
of
a
grit,
day.
yeah, 3 times a day. A little bit of grit's to be expected, I would think, on
Yeah,
the
because
greens.
you
So
know,
in Colorado, if you're not aware, you can grow zucchini like weeds. Like
really,
if you just like you don't even have to put effort into it. If you try to grow zucchini, you're going to have your cooking yard full. Um, so every fall, they had more zucchini than they knew what to do with, and it was in literally everything that they cooked. Literally, it was. Yeah.
oh man,
I didn't like it either, Krista. Um, I want to before we shut down. We're getting right at the hour mark. I want to touch on you mentioned field ministers.
yeah.
Um, I know what they are. Why don't you just kind of explain a little bit to everybody that's listening? And I may have explained it in a past show or something, but explain to us what those are.
Field ministers are guys who are doing extremely long sentences, um, who attend a 4-year seminary,
Hmm.
regionally accredited seminary program
For free.
for free, at least free to him.
Free to him. Yeah.
And soon to be her. I know they're going to start up at Hobby also for females.
Cool. Cool.
Um, after that 4-year degree, they have a degree in theology and they get assigned to units. And on those units, they are there to minister to the population.
Hmm.
Um, they have they can basically go anywhere on that facility,
Yeah, they
and
have free run of the place.
yeah, and they talk to everybody. You know, I used them. And I told the story where I was the first warden who ever requested field ministers on their facility, and because you start when that program started, the warden who had them would get a lot of extra scrutiny because
Hmm.
they want the program to work.
Hmm.
And let me go ahead and plug the foundation that actually funds that, the Heart of Texas Foundation,
Yeah.
Grove and Brenna Norwood. They do a phenomenal job. Their calling has changed prisons in Texas.
Hmm.
Um, so I spoke at one of their fundraisers several years ago and was happy to do it
Yeah.
because that program is so vital.
It
But
is.
you know, those guys, they preach sermons, they teach classes, um,
Yep.
they counsel, they will sit and hold people's hand in hospice when they're dying.
Hmm.
The work they do is phenomenal.
It
And
is. And
Yeah.
they don't shy away from it, man. Like the
No.
infirmary, we had a small infirmary at PAC. It had maybe 10 guys in the hospital part of it. But they go back there. One of them, especially McGee, he'd go back there and spend time with it. They get forgotten in the church services,
Right.
most of the time. And they'd go back there and hang out with them. They'd run up and down the hallways talking to guys, praying with them right out there in the hallway. It's an amazing program. It's changed. It really has changed the atmosphere on a lot of units.
It did. When I was at Torres, when I asked for them, the director, Mr. Collier, was gracious enough to let me have them. Torres was not on the list to get them at that point from that graduating class, and he changed that up. And I got 4 very good field ministers, and it legitimately started changing the culture on that facility. They did a great job, and they were older guys. Torres has a young population. Most of that population is 18 to 25.
Yeah.
These guys were in their mid 30s, 40s. One was almost 50 when he got there, and the population didn't take to him at first. They were suspicious of him, but once they figured out they were the real deal, because they're use prison slang, they're not snitches.
Right.
The very first thing I told them when they got to the unit is, I don't ever want you to tell me anything that's going on.
Yeah.
Don't. Because I don't want to take the chance that the program would lose its validity or credibility to the offender population because of that. And I told them, don't worry, if something needs to be told, there's somebody out there that's going to tell me, because he's either in trouble or trying to kill off the competition. So I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
So go do what you're supposed to do. Go work for God. Don't work for me.
Yeah.
And that program is amazing.
And it gives those guys, like, you have to have at least 10 years left before you're eligible for parole, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
To even be considered for the program.
Right.
And so you're looking at guys that have at least 10 more years before they ever even think about seeing the light of day. And it gives them, not only it gives them a college degree that they can go anywhere and do anything with, but it also gives them a sense of purpose.
Right.
Like they have a purpose now. They're not just doing time. They're ministering, they're working. They have something, more meaningful than out there hitting the ground with an Aggie.
Right. Exactly. They're in there impacting individuals every day. And in the long run, influencing the culture of the facility. A lot of people don't realize every prison's different. Everyone has a different vibe. Every prison has something different going on. If they house geographically like they do in Texas, where they try to keep you close to visitation, that impacts the culture on the facility. The staff they hire impacts the culture on the facility, because you're not hiring the same kind of person in Beaumont that you're hiring in Beeville. Because 2 different parts of Texas, 2 different ways that people have lived and grown up. And but those guys come in and they kind of create a situation where there's an outlet, where folks having problems have somewhere to go that isn't misinterpreted by the offender population, because that's an issue.
Right.
Somebody talks to the warden for too long, all of a sudden that jacket's on them.
Yeah.
So it is a program that just absolutely, I hope, never goes away.
Yeah, me too.
I really do. The Heart of Texas Foundation is for real changing Texas prisons.
Yep. They really are. Guys, we're just over our time, which is not a big deal. Darren, we appreciate you coming on, sir. This was amazing. I loved every minute of it.
Oh, I've had a great time. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm fixing to shoot Desi a DM and see if we can't get her on the calendar here in the next month or so.
Cool.
If she's willing. Yeah, I think that's it. Nathan?
You got nothing.
Got nothing. All right. Everyone in the comments, we appreciate y'all for coming and supporting. Like I said at the beginning of the show, like Nathan and I talk about this all the time amongst each other and to other people, is we've not had one bad experience talking about our past, talking about having been in prison on a public platform like this. There's been people that have disagreed with us, but they've done it respectfully. But there's never been anybody just straight up being ass about it.
Right.
And so we are very appreciative of that. We appreciate all of y'all's support. We really do. It means a lot to us. It really does. Yep. It was a great show, Julie. Krista, thanks for joining. It was good to see you. You too, Val. And Desi. All right, guys. That's it. We appreciate y'all, and we will see y'all in 2 weeks.
Great. Thank y'all.
Bye, y'all. Yep.